because I've been involved with St. Mary Eglise, let's say since, I'd say 1961 when I went over there, and then when Johnny Lee and I went over, brought our own parachutes over it, and she led the pilots and so forth, the French Parachute Club, and so since 1964. I've been involved very deeply with St. Mary Eglise and parachuting over there many, many, many times. Know all of the mayors, and that we put in the C47 aircraft, of which Eve Terriell and I spent 7 years of our life putting that airplane into that St. Mary Eglise Museum, and Terriell and I made that last jump on the last flight of that C47. And we made the last flight with Henri Jean Renault and Paul, bringing it up from Quiz in the southern part of France up to Cherbourg after the French Navy had returned it to World War II configuration. Got all original, everything was original in that airplane, and repainted. So when I saw that airplane on returning to France to fly from southern France up to Cherbourg, I was awestruck with the way that it looked. And Terriell was there, and Yves Terriell, the French Parachute League president, and very close friend of Madame Renault and Mayor Renault and the whole Renault family. I had everything returned to original. We got many of the things out of the junkyard in Arizona, shipped it to America. Air France brought it over free. And there's a Rebecca radar receiver in the bottom of that airplane, got from California. We had the Eureka, was what I jumped, the radar little packet, and the Rebecca was what was in the airplane. So it was flown up to Cherbourg. A Secretary of the Army, John O'Mars Jr., former congressman, was Secretary of the Army, and he had some helicopters flown from Germany to France up to Cherbourg, and they took the C-47 wings and engines and so forth and flew it in a helicopter, disassembled, down to St. Mary Eglise. Of course, the taxpayer would have to understand that was a very good tactical exercise, so to speak. But the French Navy people, the French firemen, all of the people got together and reassembled that airplane on the foundation. I had spent 7 years of my life, along with my beautiful wife, raising money in America to try and help with that, although the French Veterans Association paid the great majority, but I had raised probably $45,000 with my tin cup going around to various veterans, Airborne Veterans Association reunions and so forth. But that airplane, when we flew it up to Cherbourg, after that, the next day, Yves Terriell and I and several of French skydivers, I made the last jump out of that airplane with Yves Terriell and myself. And I still have, to this day, the ripcord that I used on that jump. And that was the last flight. After our jump, it flew over the drop zone where there were, I don't know, several thousand people watching the last jump. And the last flight of that C-47, it flew back to Cherbourg and never flew again, and it was disassembled by all of these French friends and the French Navy people, and because we got the aircraft from the French Navy, actually, and they gave it to Yves Terriell's association. And it's in the museum to this day. And I might tell you a story. On the dedication day, my wife Barbara and a French admiral broke a bottle of champagne as dedication. One of the original men who flew that aircraft on D-Day, flew it from the United States over to England, but flew it on D-Day, asked Terry and me, do you think I could go up inside the airplane, and I just want to see something. So we went up in the plane after the whole celebrations were over, and people have left the actual museum now, which is all enclosed museum. We got in the airplane, he went up and took out his little jackknife out of his pocket, and we said, what are you doing? And he said, I'm going to see something. And he put it between two parts of the section where the navigator, back of the pilot area and the navigator. He took his knife, put it in, and flicked out a 1942 penny that's still in the museum today. And he said, I found this penny. You know, when you find a penny, that means it's good luck. And he says, I put it in there before we left the United States, stuck that penny in there, said, I hope we have good luck. And that day, when that was christened, and on my wall over here, I have a part of the bottle of champagne bottle that my wife used to christen that airplane. And that crew chief took out that day of that christening, and he had never been in the aircraft since he left it in World War II. That airplane had flown with SAS airline, US Air. It had flown with so many different people. Then it wound up with the French Navy and used to fly on the Mediterranean looking for submarines and that sort of thing, until the French Navy decided to give it to the museum. So that day he pulled the penny out of and he hadn't been in that aircraft in probably 30 years. So, and that penny's in the museum.